Good morning on July the 28th. Today we'll do a walkabout of the garden, a garden tour for the end of July. We're approaching now the hottest and driest time of the year, the first 2 weeks of August. And so we'll see what the garden looks like at the beginning. The last 2 days we had above 30 degrees Celsius. And also I'll be going dark for the next couple of weeks. I'm going on a trip, so I'll give you this tour before I go, and then we'll see what it's like when we come back. The weather wasn't conducive for melons this year, so I've got most of the glass taken away from the cold frames, which is actually a good thing because a video I have planned for later, I can use the data from the thermometers in here now. There's two things that didn't want to grow very well this year. That was carrots and cucumbers. I put out cucumber transplants, I put out cucumber seeds. Here's one of the seeds. Oh, it sprouted, but it just doesn't want to grow. Some of the eggplants are growing. This is cabbage, early Copenhagen market, that I overwintered in this cold frame. And now it's flowering very well. Our early Copenhagen market is a heirloom variety, so I can get seeds from this year. This is my only outdoor eggplant that I have flowering. Well, it's no flowers out on it, but there's flower buds coming, so in the next little bit there'll be flowers on it. I didn't spend much time getting rid of the weeds in these cold frames. The lilac bush, that's from last year. I didn't dead edit. The flowers aren't out on it yet. It doesn't seem like it's going to flower very well. You see? But the plant is relatively healthy. This snowball bush, I was thinking it was something I did, but there's 3 other snowball bushes in the cove. They all done the same thing. Now it's been some years. Earlier this spring this sprouted out and caterpillars come and eat all the leaves, and now it's sending out more leaves. My neighbor has one. The same thing happened, and his is coming back now. My uncle had one that went just like this, and he cut it right down low enough that he could run over it with the lawnmower, and he was going to get the roots dug up when he realized it was starting to grow again, so he left it, and now he has the root system of a very big bush there and a little small bush growing out of it. So I'm thinking that's probably what's going to happen to that one. I'll cut it right down and hope that it grows back up, and for a while I'll just have a circular planting area here. The onion sets are growing really well in this little area. And when I go up in section 2 collecting mulch, this is what I get. I got a lot of leaves and twigs and whatnots. I went up there and got as much mulch as I could. This is where I ran out of mulch, so that's why it's not completely mulched. I have some beans growing here. That's a cucumber. So that cucumber plant right there And that one right there are the biggest cucumber plants I have. They just don't want to grow this year. There's a couple of squash plants in there, a couple of bean plants. Now here's something that's growing nicely. Along by the front fence, I have a tight row of sunflowers, a row of onion plants out in front of them. They're growing really nicely. And the peas, they're all beginning to flower now when I come back from my trip. Oh, there's one that's already starting to grow a pod. When I come back from my trip, there'll be a lot of pods on here. Here's another pod. And the mulch from section 2. So it's a little greener because I just put this mulch on here last night. But I'm going to have a lot of sunflowers. Most of these are black oil sunflowers, but every 2 feet there's another variety. Here's a bud from a black oil sunflower here. I have some nasturtiums planted. The seed packet didn't come with very many seeds. I was in one of the local stores looking at the seeds, and there was a lady there looking at them as well. So we started talking, and she said how much she loved the nasturtiums, and that you collect the seeds in the fall and replant them in the spring. So I bought some, and I have a few growing. There's 1, 2, 3. I can show you right there. They're not flowering yet, but they have lots of time. And I'll collect the seeds in the fall, and next year I'll have a lot more of them to underplant all the sunflowers with. Stand back a little bit, get a better view of how those sunflowers are growing. We come on the outside of the fence. Asters, I don't need those to flower this year because they're perennials. I hope they flower, but if they don't, it's not serious. They just need to continue to grow this year, and they will flower next year. The marigolds, they all have their buds on now. They're starting to flower. And I was going along here. I don't have much of a space here, so I can't take the lawnmower along, and I really don't like running the line trimmer. So I was pulling up the grass, just breaking it off and putting it down here as a mulch. And I noticed this plant. And I'm like, what the? So I rub it. Smell it. That's oregano. There are several oregano plants along here. I don't know how they got there, but I guess they're part of my chaos gardening now. And from the outside here you can see a lot more of the flowers from the peas. Center portion is going to look really beautiful when all the sunflowers and marigolds are flowering. This rose bush is a type of rose bush that kind of needs to be trellised. And so this arm here I had to tie it up to the fence, but that's okay. It's growing really nicely. A couple of years ago a lot of the branches died and I had to cut them down, but it's beautiful this year. The snow peas, which are growing along here, are growing nicely. One of the odd things I'm finding is that these taller sunflowers here, one of them is Russian mammoth and the other is black sundial. And this one don't have a bud on it yet, so that might be the Russian mammoth. When we come over here, as you can see, it's forming a bud here, so that's the size it's going to grow. And both of those are supposed to grow up higher than that fence, so they're not growing as tall as they're supposed to. Here we are on the outside of the middle section of the front fence. And as you can see, the marigold buds are getting really big here. Be opening any time at all. I thought I put a zinnia over on the first section, but I can't find it. And so coming along here, I find this. So I'm wondering if the zinnia over in the other spot was totally eaten or not. This will be a new plant for Newfoundland. It's a native plant from Ontario, actually, and I'm assuming it got in the with the seeds from a packet of wildflower seeds for the pollinators that I had. You see these deep little curves on the bottom? Butterflies with their long tongue, or hummingbirds, will pollinate these flowers. Walking along here, I want to show you, if I were to just let my meadow area grow up, this is what it would look like. Let me zoom in on that Sweet William there. A full mass of wild plants. In the third section, this is snow peas growing up against the fence. The sunflowers not growing very well. The onions are doing okay. There's a few sunflowers down at the end there that are doing okay. But the native soil here in this area is very shallow and very poor. So it's just a bit of lasagna gardening type stuff that I've been doing over the past year that the plants are living in. The marigolds they're okay. They're not growing any much, but they're doing okay. All I need, like I said, is for them to stay alive and keep growing, and they'll come back next year. But I will get a lot of snow peas, snap peas from this line. Something else here I wanted to show you. When you start growing your own seed, you never know where a seed is going to pop up. And along here, I'm going to have a chaos of, I'm assuming, it's turnip. I'll let that one, this here, I'll let this go to seed and see what comes up next year. There's several of those that are growing along here. This is a beautiful bush. I think it's one of the asters. It's got all its buds out now. when I come back from my trip, this will be loaded with daisy-like flowers. One on this side of the steps, and there's another one over there. I'll have to put a support around, because when the flowers come out, they tend to fall over and then be hanging down on the ground. But I'll put a support around it and it'll look very nice. You'll see that when I come back. Of course, I showed the bushes in the last video or the video before, the fruit bushes. Purple smoke tree. I wrapped it in burlap last winter, and so it has come back very well this year. If I had not done that, this would only be half growed, and there's a slew of buds now on it. You can see the buds all over. When they actually come out fully out, it'll look like puffs of smoke all over the bush, hence the name smoke bush. This winter I think I'm going to protect that a little more. It's a really beautiful tree when you protect it, but in zone 5, if you don't put a protection around it for the winter, you'll get winter kill, and it kills off all the budding ends of the bush, and so then some of the leaves portion comes back and it still looks like a nice purple bush, but you won't get your puffs of smoke all over it. Strawberry plants that I bought from Vessey's this year, they're doing very well in my opinion. This though is the way I like the surface of the strawberry bed. I find wood chips or hay or something kind of restricts the strawberry growth. You need a thick layer of just good organic material like this fine material. I found that strawberry grow the best in. That's just my experience. I noticed this strawberry here last night. I decided to wait till this morning when I was recording to pick it. Get that bit of dirt off it. Ooh, tasty. We are back under the maple tree. This aster is perking up and looking good. I had some extra strawberry plants from when I planted the other one that I just showed you, the bed of them. And so I stuck them in over here and they're growing. This is an oregano, Greek oregano. The lavender is doing very nicely since I put it in here. That's another one of the strawberry plants there. There's an aster. That dock is withering. I don't know why. It was quite healthy when I showed it to you before. I have another strawberry plant there. There's another lavender that's growing quite well. So when they grow up, now I'll have a fairly large lavender plant there, one up there. I'll have a ground cover of oregano with a few strawberry plants poking up through it, and then I'll have a big bunch of multicolored flowers back right there. So we come from the maple tree, the first firecracker goji, the pear tree. This is the broccoli, and it's getting ahead. Hopefully it just grows up into a nice head and it's still compact when I get back from my trip. It's not gone too far. The chamomile is growing really nicely here. Now that'll go to seed and drop all its seeds down here, and next year there will be a lot of chamomile growing here. I'm not sure if I'm going to collect seeds from that or not. It doesn't seem that they're getting pollinated that well. We'll see. We'll see what happens for what seeds grow here, what seeds fall, and what seeds I collect for next year. So as we pass by the Myra cherry plum, the blueberry bush, I think I probably would have showed you that last. This is another broccoli. I think it's just starting to form a head, but it's not noticeable yet. There's a cabbage, Swiss chard, chamomile. In there's another oregano. Now the main garden. That's looking nice. As gardening goes, some good things and some bad things. One of the good things is right here. I haven't picked the strawberries yet this morning. I harvested yesterday. Got about a liter of strawberries from my strawberry patch here, and as you can see, the plants are all growing back nice and healthy. So the bugs that infested them last year, they never come back this year. This is just the first flush of berries, and late August, early September, they'll give a second flush. That's what you call everbearing. They're actually bear spring and fall, not actually truly everbearing. Okay, so here's a disappointment. I planted carrots along here. Now I know what went wrong. The middle of May, no later than May the 24th, I plant carrots. And the time come I was going to go plant them, and we had like 3 weeks of rain, and I didn't want to work in the rain, so it was early June before I got out to plant them, and I'm thinking, well, they still got lots of time to grow. But the problem is then the weather. So then we had a bit of dry weather and very spotty germination. You need to keep the soil moist. In this bed in particular, earlier in the year, a guy came and he wanted to get some earthworms, so we went through this bed and we turned it all over, which ended up with a surface of the bed with a very low organic matter in it. So not only did we have the bit of dry weather when I planted carrots, it also, the surface area where the seeds were, as soon as the sun shined, it dried out. So in Newfoundland, get your carrots in the middle of May, and you want that layer of organic matter on top of your bed. Beans, this is Jacob's cattle, they're coming along nicely. You don't bother to plant those direct sow until at least the first week of June, if not the second week. The flowers are out on, now this is the one with the stick beside it, so this is a one that I transplanted. I had it started inside. I'm maybe a couple weeks ahead. There's some flowers out here. But now there's one of the direct sowed ones, and you see the flower there. It's about ready to come open, so it's not very far behind the ones that I actually transplanted. Both of the transplants have flowers open. Maybe a week behind. Not worth talking about in my opinion. This bed does have some volunteer Swiss chard in it. They can get quite noisy, bumblebees can. So now this is the California poppy. The ones that I planted out by the fence, there's some of them still alive, but they didn't come very well. This will be a self-seed from last year, and when the pods, looking something like that, grows up, they get quite long and dry out, and you can collect the seeds from them, and I guess I'll sprinkle them on well-prepared ground, and they'll grow up next year. But the yellow flowers is mustard, and I planted this here. This is a test, so it didn't matter how they grew, it would have been a success, but they grew very well, in my opinion. And I'm planting them for the seeds to use them as culinary mustard seed, making mustard powder, etc. These are just from the spice bottle. Next year I'm going to get a name variety and add more mustard growing. I have a couple of cabbage plants put in here that are growing well. And in the center, down the center of this bed, there are some more Jacob's Cattle beans. Potatoes, according to the top, seem to be doing really nicely. These are the first open flowers now. They've had buds on them for quite a while. Pollinators comes in all shapes and sizes, not just bees. If anybody knows the name of this bug, it's another one of our pollinators around here. So as I was saying, according to the look of the tops, the potatoes are growing just right. If you get really high tops, usually it's a signal that you've got too much nitrogen and they won't have as big a bulbs. You might think, oh, it's growing wonderful. But then you dig them up and your potatoes are small and there's only half as many as what you would expect. But when they're growing short and stocky like this, then usually you get a fairly good harvest. This bed, they don't seem to be growing as well. This is another one of those where the amendment is not quite complete yet, so I expect this to be the worst of the potato beds even before I plant it. Next to it, the turnip germination was spotty. As you can see, there's places where there are no turnips. They're coming along though, and late in August I'll have quite a few turnips to harvest and make some vegetable soup out of. My garlic, I'm debating whether I should harvest them now, before I go, like in 2 days time, or should I wait until after I come back? Because the tips are starting to brown, as you can see. You know what, I'm going to pull this one up. He's not very big. I'll wait till I come back to pull up the rest. Going along this bed, here's what I did around the rutabaga seed so that they don't just fall out into the pathway. Otherwise they'd be fell right down on the ground now. Good crop of rutabaga seed there. And here's the beet plants that I put in to grow the seed. Looking nice, huh? There's the inflorescence here. The flowers are not open yet. Guess hopefully they'll be open when I come back and I can show you. Now, here's my second bed of carrots. Once again, spotty germination because of the drier weather right after I planted them. But a lot more germination. The turnips, that's volunteer plants. This bed wasn't disturbed, so it still had a lot of organic matter sitting on top. And the germination was much better. And here's a puzzle. So I let grow what I thought was a turnip, volunteer turnip, and it grew up to go to seed. Everything looking like a turnip plant, except it's got white flowers. What this is, I don't know. I guess I'll have to collect seeds from it and see what grows out of it. There, of course, being your regular turnip flowers. Somebody said borash flowers were really tasty. I'm gonna try them. Ooh, sweet cucumber taste, yeah. They'd be excellent to add to a salad. I think I mentioned this before about a lot of the turnip that I thought were the ones I sowed, and I'm still assuming they're what I sowed, but they grew up and they went to flower. They're out of sync with the rutabaga, so I'm not worried about them crossing. The Chantenay carrots that I planted, they germinated better than the toucan, which was my main carrot crop. This is the fall planting bed, so we go across. Now there is the toucan's carrots that I planted in the fall, and they're growing really well. I'll show you more a little later. And this is nice. If you had a lot of beet seed, you could plant them late in the fall, and what survives, survive, because these beets that you see here were fall planted beets. And like now I'm growing my own beet seed. When you do that, you usually have an abundance of seed, so if only 20% of them came up, not much odds, because, well, you really didn't pay anything for them anyway. This, once again, is the Chantenay carrots that I'm hoping takes off a little bit more than what they're doing. And here, the parsnip seem to be doing very well. And we'll swing around and look at our rutabaga. This is the Thompson Laurentian rutabaga. They'll get long and grow quite fast now after this next couple of weeks of hot weather. When the weather starts to cool down, they'll take right off. Coming all the way across back to where the white flowers are, that is American purple top rutabaga. Now in right here, I have another turnip that's got to be harvested. It's not really a good idea to let them get very big. It looks to me like my two beds of beets are going to do well this year. Don't count chickens before the year. They're not starting to swell out yet, but the tops are doing okay. I have everything mulched, as you've been probably noticing, and I soaked them down there a couple of days ago, and I'll soak them again before I leave. Hopefully everything survives that way. I really loaded the mulch on this bed. This is the one where I had planned to put my cole crops all along, and now I've got them put here and there in a bunch of different places. The sets, onion sets that I put in, they're not growing as well in this bed as what they are out by the front fence. And the kale doesn't grow very well. I got some here gone to seed. It flowered out of sync with the rutabaga once again, so I'm pretty sure that that is not crossed with the rutabaga. I will need to harvest my rhubarb for the third time. I never pointed these out, I don't think. That's a grapevine there, and another one over there. Now these were ones that I bought a couple years ago, so they're Valiant grape. Well, here's the other two potatoes beds. I'm expecting to get a really good crop there. Along with the turnip growing up in the pathway. I already took quite a few radishes out of here. And that's the kohlrabi growing there. I'll have to remove these lettuce here because I guess I dropped a bunch of seed and they're growing tight together, and this is head lettuce, so I'll have to thin that out a bit before I go and let them grow properly. In the sunny plot there's one last bed left to show you, and that's this one. There's a few interesting things going on here. Now, as I said, I've got things mulched. But you see this. I bought 4 plants from the nursery. And so, while I paid $2 for those 4 plants, making 50 cents an onion, it is an example of what you can do with seeds if you get them to grow right. These, yeah, they're small. Remember back in the beginning I put these ambition shallots out here. I wanted to see what would happen if I direct sowed ambition shallots. So even that they're growing this well is a success, because now I know what they will grow like direct sow. I grew some carrot seed here, and I have almost as many carrot growing in this bed as I do in the beds that I planted deliberately. Soldier beans. See, some of them have grown very well. I'm calling the bean test a success. I've got these to grow well in the Jacob's cattle. I feel that it's just a matter of getting the right combination of soil and moisture, and they will do well here. Now, as for onions that I planted inside back in February or March, whenever it was, conserva shallots this is. They are doing really well. Extremely happy with them. And since this is the last bed, we'll pop over and show you the rest of them in the shady plot. Now here they are here. Still growing well for a test. I have some ideas on how to get them to do better next year. The soil in this bed is composted wood chips. I don't consider it as good as the good compost that I put in the other bed, and so that's the reason for the lower amount of growth. But if we go along, these are the red spring onions. And look at this. It's the last of July. They have plenty of time to grow. I might get some good onions out of this. For my first try, I am quite happy with that. The beans growing down near the center, that's black turtle. They are starting to flower. And the beans, they need full sun. In that bed back there, there are some bean plants, but they're just not growing. I think I said already, beans, wait for the second week of June, plant them then, and just direct sow them. So next to the conserva shallots and red spring onions is arugula. Full bed, didn't have to mulch that because the arugula itself is growing as a living mulch. They seem to go to seed a little earlier than lettuce. They're not bad tasting though, even afterwards. Arugula has a kind of a little bit of a strong aftertaste. I wouldn't sit down and eat a bunch of arugula, but they are really good when you mix it with spinach and lettuce, the other milder greens, into a salad. It just gives your salad a little bit of spice. And there, as you can see, there's a lot of them going to flower. We're going to have a lot of arugula growing here. There's probably be an arugula bed now from now on. Then I'll just pull up some plants and poke squash plants and whatever in there. You can see here, this is a butternut squash. There's one, two, another one. This is a vegetable spaghetti squash here. I'll have to clear out some arugula around this one, I think. There might be another one or two hiding in among that somewhere. Now, this is my first year growing spinach. So we're coming from the arugula bed right here, going across, and we're going into more shade. So this is spinach. It's a really mild flavor and a good flavor. This leaf is cut off because I came here yesterday, and as you can see, it's got a very much of an arrow leaf, not like the spinach leaf. So I broke it off and tasted it. It basically tastes like if you sprinkled spinach with sugar, you get this. It's sweet. I'm guessing it's two different varieties of spinach though. They taste much alike, it's just that one is sweeter than the other. Back in the back here now, you notice Swiss chard was planted back there. Some of it is growing. It doesn't grow very well in the shade. It's growing. You can plant Swiss chard in the shade if you want. I mean, something is better than nothing, right? The squash plants that you see in the center of this bed are zucchini, and the ones that are close to the edge, like that one and that one, are vegetable spaghetti. They are all starting to bud, and the zucchini's flowers are actually starting to open on. See, this is leaf lettuce, and they're getting really big. Now I have this paintbrush here because this is the first open female zucchini flower, and there's a male right next to it. Zucchini, you don't normally have to pollinate because they grow in a kind of a bush habit. Just wipe the mass of stamens down there in that one. And then just touch the top of the pistils down in this one. Look at how much nectar is in the bottom of that flower. So while I'll be gone, it really doesn't matter because zucchini flowers, pollinators, they do a very good job at pollinating them, whether the other vegetation is growing up around them or not. This is my other bed of spinach, and as you can see, some of it going to flower, so there'll be no shortage of salad greens here next year. I'm standing here by the lettuce zucchini bed. We can swing around, and there's the other 4 beds of potatoes looking to be growing very well. I always like to point out how well that rhubarb is growing back there. It's gotten pretty much no attention actually. This year I think I'll throw some more compost on it, and it's growing very well there in deep shade. We'll walk over and have a look at this. This outside portion here will get sun for maybe 3 hours. And that little bit of sun in there, it's coming in between the shop and the row of trees. It'll soon be gone. So the red cabbage here, they're growing nicely. And looks like they're starting to form heads. This will be my first year of getting good cabbage plants, and I'll be very happy with that. Here's a green cabbage. That's a cauliflower, I think. And behind it would be broccoli. I don't know what those are back there. There's some kale right in the back. That's some flat leaf kale. Very happy with that bed of cole crops this year. This bed, but I'm not so sure of the surface material. It's a lot of hash, so it's probably pretty sweet. The St. John's wort, it's not growing fast, but it seems to be healthy. And this is the head lettuce, the rest of the head lettuce that I planted. I don't know how that carrot got there. See, here's the black turtle beans as they're growing in this bed. I'll show you a couple more further down. The kale that I planted here on the corner seems to be doing okay, but not spectacular by no stretch of the imagination. As you come back in, as the soil got warmer, you see this is shade, as I've been saying, and so the soil don't warm up as fast, and eventually some of the beans started to sprout, and that's what you got here. But the soil was not warm enough, so it'll have no time to grow now. The other cole crops that I had some late transplants of, and I put here, they're doing well. They're small just because, well, they're still only little tiny things when I put them there, so they're a full month behind the other ones. So they're doing well, and I've got them well mulched to keep moisture in. Out here, just because I was waiting for these to come up, I couldn't really mulch this area. And now we'll turn around and look at the herbs. There's 2 beds of herbs here. I have this oregano. This was the original oregano I wanted. Down in the other old herb bed, I ended up with oregano that grows like 2 feet tall. And this one is more of a ground cover thing. This is Zatak oregano. It's got really soft leaves. Reminds me of that lamb's hair plant. I have 3 plants put here as well of this Zatak. It looks like it's going to grow taller than the Greek oregano, and we'll see which one will be good for a ground cover. Will it be this one? Will this one be a good ground cover? Will both of them? We'll find out now in the next year or the year after. I'm really liking this stuff. This is Chinese celery. It tastes just like celery. You take a couple branches, you see, I've cut a piece right here. You take a couple of stalks and you chop it up fine and you throw it in your soup or your stir fry or whatever. Just as good as the regular celery you buy in the store. But there's no extra work with it. You just plant it and let it grow like that. Give it some good fertile soil. I planted these chives here last fall. I grew them from seed. This is just the 2nd year. Well, last year they were in deep shade. There's been some trees removed now, so they get a little more sun this year. And they've grown quite well. This is winter savory. I have 1, 2, 3 plants. It's another one of those herbs that will start out slow, but it's a perennial and it will get bigger and bigger every year, growing better and better. Bronze fennel. I had this growing inside, and it would grow just basically green leaves, the same color as this basil. And I'm like, well, that doesn't look very bronze now, does it? I decided to bring it out and plant it out here, and sure enough, it grows bronze leaves. So under grow lights, bronze fennel will be green, but in the full sun, bronze fennel is bronze. Don't know how it got there, but it's growing nicely. So which means I'm going to plant some more seeds in this area come fall and see what grows in the spring. Catnip is a very good tea. I really like it. This basil is flowering. Huh. I just noticed that. That's mammoth basil. 2 sweet basils. And another mammoth basil. Once again, I have a lavender here. And another one growing in here. This is more of the catnip. I let this thing go to seed last year, and it spread seed all over this area. And now I've got catnip weed growing. That's that bed. You turn around, this is where the sage was growing. Sage is already to zone 5, so when we had the abnormal dip in temperature, it killed all my sage plants, and I didn't get a chance to put new ones back there. Tarragon, 2 different versions. That's French tarragon, I know that. I don't know what variety this one. That's not tarragon. You know what that is? That's lavender. I lost the label. The hens tore out the label is what happened. And I don't know where the label is. But that's flowering. We'll find out now if it's lavender. Now these flowers, that's just another plant growing up inside. They're edible as well. Here you have our green lemon thyme. I think I gotta trim back some more on this because it's hanging out over where the base of this thyme is, that almost got killed with the cold weather. It's French thyme, and that's green lemon thyme. And another bunch of chives which I might take out of here. Chamomile. A lot of that growing. When these flowers dry up, hopefully I'll take them off and sprinkle the seed in over here. And the bigger leaf thing, that's echinacea. I don't know what it's like where my viewers are living, but around here you give raspberries their space and they can spread so fast. I said I had 12 feet here, and I could put the 3 compost bins along in a row and work the way back toward the far fence. But last year, you see these taller stalks. I got a few right here. There's a few right there. There's 3 or 4 down there. Well, that's where raspberries were growing. There's very few raspberries there, and they grow up this year. And then I've got this. Let's see if I walk up this way, if you'd see it better. You see, now I've got a full row of raspberries. So much for the 12 feet. I want to get this back into a raspberry patch eventually anyway. This is the current raspberry patch. They're the regular red raspberries. Thornless. There is actually a space here. Even though you can't see it. And I'll move it back and open it up so I can get in there and harvest the raspberries. But my raspberry plants, both of them, I have this kind and I have the golden raspberries, and they're growing so well. This is a volunteer, 2 volunteer black oil sunflowers. There's a flower open already. Last of July, something direct sown, and direct sown late that would be, accidentally. Flowering already. I'm thinking black oil sunflowers is going to work into being actually a good crop here. The main reason why I'm trying to see how many sunflowers I'm going to grow is because I want to get the oil pressed and make sunflower oil. Now we're up behind the cherry and plum tree. You've seen this before. And just continuing with the spread of raspberries that I was just talking about. These are all golden raspberries. Was it 3 or 4 plants? Can't remember. 3 or 4 just one single stems plants I put here 2 years ago. And they're last year where I planted them, they burst into life, and this year they're coming up across here to turn this place into a nice little jungle for me. And as we look down here, the last time I showed you this plant, that flower right here, I said I expected it to dry up, and it did. But it was right out at the end of the plant. Now the plant is growing. There's another female flower right there. Of course, there's male flower buds. We're just waiting for a female flower to open now and get pollinated. This is the Dill's Atlantic Giant. Going up here, there's a row of garlic I have planted along here. They don't look well, but I didn't expect them to do well. This is another one of those areas where I threw down some composted material and planted something in to see how it would do. And this is the second year. They are growing much better here this year, according to the tops, than they did last year. Last year I planted a clove, and for each clove I planted I got 2 cloves back. Yeah, this is the old herb area. Still looking quite ugly. But the reason I came over here was to show you this. So this baby pan pumpkin is growing. There's flower buds coming out on it. They're all male yet, but there's a good chance that I might get a fruit to set. And if I get a fruit to set, I will protect it from the first few frosts to get it to mature. There's one plant, and there's a second plant, smaller, but there are buds, flower buds starting on it. And this is my original patch of chives. Of course, you've seen the flower bed here before. The lilies are going to be flowering here pretty soon. And I guess we'll take a look in among this grapevine. Ooh, that's not a bumblebee. Don't very often see one of them. It's one of those ground bees, I believe. Or maybe it's a solitary bee. At any rate, every once in a while you'll see one of them, and there's 2 in there. I'll keep it back to me. Anyway, back to the grapes. Most of these flowers have been pollinated, and so they'll grow into a mass of grapes here now over the next month or so. But the number of grapes that get ripe are very, very few. I might be able to make a strong jelly with them though, the same as I would do with the currants. If you got any ideas on what to do with grapes that are not quite ripe, you can leave it in the comments below. That'll be appreciated. So that's a little walkabout here. I haven't taken down that apple tree yet. And when I come back from my little trip, I'll make another walk around and see what's new. There should be some very interesting stuff happen while I'm gone. So I hope you like that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.